very, very positive result. I think the market was mostly to be expecting this over the last couple of days. We have seen Rio up about 1.5%, and off its June lows, it was in fact up about 15% ahead of this very strong result. So very good result given the fact that we have seen commodity prices really falling off across most of its commodities, really. But of course, we know that they have combated that fall in commodities by increasing and ramping up their production, particularly their iron ore production, which for the first 6 months was in fact up about 20%. Of course, it also has been a year of cost cutting, so they've announced today that they've cut costs of about $3.2 billion since 2012. So we know that the CEO really is aggressively pursuing a lot of asset sales to cut costs by up to sort of $5 billion by the end of 2014. So it certainly looks like they are on target to achieve that. I do certainly agree in terms of those varying iron ore prices. Rio is pretty well positioned given that it does have a very low break-even price, so it is sort of not as vulnerable to any falls in that iron ore price, and in our view we do remain very positive and do certainly see some upside in the share price as well.
Australand, the clock ticking. I think they have just over 2 hours and 20, or just under 2 hours and 20 minutes until the deal lapses. Last we heard Fraser's had about 40%. Of course, they need 50 and over, I believe, to get it over the line.
Approval, and really it has been looking a little bit uncertain today. This morning we saw they had about 29% approval. By about midday that had jumped up to about 39.5%, and I do think it's up to about 46% at the moment. So it is looking like it's very close to that 56% I beg your pardon, 50% approval. We did see Australian shares jumping up about 0.9%. However, they did close at that $4.48 level, which we know is the takeover bid from Fraser's Centre Point. So it was sort of trading below that earlier today, I think reflecting a bit of uncertainty around this takeover sort of going ahead. So I think we will certainly have to wait until around 7 p.m. tonight to see whether that does go ahead. It did look like a very compelling offer for shareholders. We know that that bid that came through from Fraser's Centre Point was an all-cash offer in comparison to Stockland's previous offer, which was only a small cash component. So in order for Stockland to then come through and trump the bid, they would significantly have to increase their cash component, which we don't think is likely. We do think that Stockland is more likely to be selling out of their 19.9% stake in Australand and keeping a hold of those profits. So it certainly will be all eyes at about 7 p.m. and hoping to get that 50% approval.
The jobs numbers, we're going to be talking about a little bit later in the show, but did we see that have the big surprise, 6.4% unemployment, have much of an impact on the market?
We didn't see it have much of an impact. Initially, when we got that number through, we did see the ASX 200 dropping off, but then we did see it picking back up again and trading relatively flat, as it has done for most of the day. However, we did see the Aussie dollar falling right off after that, over expectations that we may in fact start to see potentially some rate cuts coming through. But in terms of our market, we really didn't see much movement when we did see that coming through, although it really was disappointing. The best performer really being that materials space, and that was led higher by those gold stocks. We saw gold surging overnight as investors are sort of jumping into that safe haven as a result of these geopolitical tensions. So really did see a lot of those gold stocks performing quite strongly. The worst performers being that IT and healthcare space. But as Mike mentioned, does seem to be pretty good given those negative leads that we are receiving from overseas market. The Australian market does seem to be pretty resilient and does seem to be holding up pretty well, and particularly given some of these strong earnings reports that we've been seeing through.